Hello and welcome to this edition of The Payoff. I'm Drew Goldfarb, joined by Rick Rockwell. We're going to be diving into the world of professional wrestling, discussing storylines, ideas, and of course, potential payoffs on prop betting as well. Today we're focused on WWE Clash of Champions, happening this Sunday in Charlotte, North Carolina. Odds reference here available through BetOnline. We're going to be breaking down a handful of what should be the biggest matches or the most intriguing matches from a betting perspective. There are 11 matches currently scheduled for the card as of this recording. No betting odds posted at the moment for the Women's Tag Team Championship match between Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross, and then the team of Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville on the other side, or for AJ Styles' championship defense against Cedric Alexander. Let's get a few of these matches out of the way that Rick and I agree on before we get started. Roman Reigns will beat Rowan and pay out at minus 600, though neither of us mind a small flyer on Rowan. He's got those plus 350 odds. AJ Styles will retain against Cedric Alexander. Again, no odds. Kofi Kingston will retain against Randy Orton, paying at minus 200. Bliss and Cross will retain against Deville and Rose. Again, no odds on that match. And the New Day is going to retain against the Revival. That pays at a minus 160. Finally, for the Cruiserweights, Drew Gulak will retain against Humberto Carrillo and Lince Dorado and pay out at minus 140. So, all of those out of the way, let's move on to some of the matches that we do want to discuss. We start with the Intercontinental Championship match. The champ, Shinsuke Nakamura, a minus 250 betting favorite, defending against The Miz at an awesome plus 170. Rick, which side are you on?
How has The Miz fallen so greatly? Prior to WrestleMania, even into WrestleMania, he was one of the biggest, or at least the most recognizable feuds in the WWE at the time against Shane McMahon. And it was a good feud. It was built up. Even though we knew it was coming, it still built it up. It still had some action, some drama, some meat to it. Then they switched rosters around, and before you know it, The Miz is back to being irrelevant. If it wasn't for his show, The Miz would be an afterthought in the WWE. They just dropped the ball on him so many times. If you're not picking up what I'm putting down, there's no way Miz is winning this weekend. Shinsuke's going to win. I like the pairing of him and Sami Zayn. It started off kind of odd, but it's working. I think they can even work a tag team run out of this pairing. I really like what they got going in terms of just having Zayn's mouthpiece and get Shinsuke over more because he's a talented wrestler, and WWE didn't know what else to do with him. WWE's dropping the ball on The Miz. I think it's terrible what they're doing with him. I don't see him winning this match. I think Shinsuke will win, probably because his manager just drew Sami Zayn or interferes somehow, which is what managers are there for, and I have no problem with that part. But it's going to come at the expense of Miz losing again.
I could very well see that happening. I agree with you that they dropped the ball on The Miz. The downfall kind of started with Shane beating him at WrestleMania, even if it was a fluky win that The Miz kind of went all in on it and ended up losing because of it at Mania. I very much enjoyed their Mania match and that feud for the most part. But I don't see any real value with Nakamura at minus 250. I don't know that I would be betting on that side. Maybe it's just me being hopeful that they're going to pick the ball back up with The Miz. He's a plus 170 underdog. I think it might just be me being hopeful, but I'm just going to pick The Miz on this one.
You're being optimistic, man. Who was The Undertaker just with in the ring on SmackDown?
Sami Zayn.
Exactly. That doesn't bode well for The Miz.
It does and it doesn't. It's not like Zayn went over on The Undertaker, but
No.
But yes, I agree that that it certainly gave that duo the rub a bit. I think, though, that you could still go with that. And if you want to make them a tag team, I don't know that you need a singles championship around one of their waists. Unless you're going to try to have them never actually win a tag championship kind of thing or never really contend and then have them split. But, like I said, it might just be me being hopeful. I don't see minus 250 as being really good value. I mean, when you look up and down this card, minus 250 is the second highest, the second biggest favorite among the matches we're talking about. So I might just be turned away by that at that point. This may be a fight I'd rather not wager on, but if I'm putting it, I'd do a little flyer on The Miz. Let's move to the Raw Women's Championship match. This one, even odds on both sides. Becky Lynch, the reigning champion at minus 120, facing off against Sasha Banks. The legit boss is a legit minus 120 as well. So, Rick, this is a coin toss of a pick. Who do you think picks up the Raw Women's Championship on Sunday, or at least gets the win in the match? They don't technically have to win the title.
You know, I think all the momentum's with Sasha Banks right now. I think all the interest, all the momentum's with Sasha Banks. They killed Becky Lynch's momentum when they did the stupid, ridiculous, horrible on-air romance with Seth Rollins and shoved it down our throats, made us all vomit. Becky Lynch hasn't been the same since then. And that feud she had with, what's her face, Lacey Evans, did nothing for her. She hasn't gone anywhere since then. She's basically living off the fumes of the massive run she had, and I think those fumes are finally going to run out this weekend. Sasha Banks is the new flavor right now. Love the blue hair. She's just as talented in the ring. What she's got going on with Bayley, as them two being heels, working together. I would love to see both of them help each other win their matches. I think that'd be great. I think that further their dominance as a duo. Both of them having belts would be great. Go after the tag titles, get those back. They have a chance to take these two women and make them into megastars like they have with Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch. I think WWE should go all out doing that. Whether they do it or not, well, that's a different story. But I'm taking Sasha Banks for this one. I think she picks up the win in the match. Whether she gets the belt or not, that's a different story. I believe she should be champ. I'm going to say she gets the championship belt. It's time for Sasha's reign to begin.
I agree with you, and it also leads into the match we're going to be talking about next. But I think that this championship's going to go to Sasha. I think that they've done a really good job of building Banks and Bayley from, the wreckage of what they had been 8 months ago, or I guess it would be 6 months ago at WrestleMania. They've basically risen from the ashes, reformed, and better as a duo, and I really like what they're doing with them. I think that Sasha winning makes a lot of sense. I think Becky is a really good – giving her someone to chase again can help her get back any of the momentum that she may have lost, at least in some fans' eyes. I'm still big on Becky Lynch. The on-screen romance to match their actual engagement, I don't mind quite as much. They are the best in their respective divisions in 2019, or at least – among the best, depending on where you rank Seth Rollins. I think that it's very reasonable to basically make them a power couple. And I think that it's reasonable to make Sasha and Bayley a power duo and dominate the women's division entirely. And I think that when you've got Becky and Charlotte, who have been frenemies, for lack of better wording, for the last year, I think it makes a lot of sense to have them have to come back together, and it makes both of them better. It makes Sasha better. It makes Bayley a lot better. It helps all four of the original four horsewomen, the four that basically made NXT's women's division what it became, which eventually led to the WWE Raw and SmackDown women's divisions being what they have become in the last few years. Not to discount Paige, not to discount AJ Lee. These four were the ones that got the most attention because they were the first to get time. And I think that having Sasha win and to move on to the SmackDown Women's Championship match, to have Bayley win and retain, and you could do it with them cheating and helping each other out. You can have it where Charlotte attempts to help Becky and ends up costing her. You could have it where Becky attempts to help Charlotte and ends up costing her, or both, or all of the above. And it would be nothing but building four women into superstars again, because we know what these four horsewomen can do. We saw what they did at NXT. We've seen what they can do, what they're capable of on the main roster. And I think that it starts with, or continues, and steps to a new level with Sasha and Bayley just being a power duo in the women's division. So Sasha at minus 120, Bayley at minus 140 is my pick. Charlotte, the betting underdog to win that match against the champion Bayley in the SmackDown match at plus 100. Do you agree with me? Are you also picking Bayley in the SmackDown match?
Yeah, Charlotte, in my opinion, is the greatest female wrestler of all time. She's one of my favorite wrestlers, period, in the industry. I love Charlotte, but I think for storyline purposes, Bayley needs to win here. And I've been picking against Bayley for 3-4 months now. Did not like her title run, period. I didn't want her to have the belt. I thought it was terrible. I think WWE can get a lot of mileage out of this quad feud they could have going here. They can have tag team matches. They can switch up feuds. Bayley and Becky can feud. Sasha and Charlotte can reignite their amazing feud they've had. Like, there's a lot they can do here, a lot of mileage to get out of this. But to do that, the best way is to have Bayley and Sasha both win.
Totally agreed. Let's move on. We have 2 matches left, and they're related, so we're showing them back to back. We start with the Raw Tag Team Championship match. Seth Rollins and Braun Strowman are the reigning champions. They are plus 140 betting underdogs against the team of Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode, who are minus 180 betting favorites to become the new, or at least to win this match over the Raw Tag Team Champions. Do you think that Roode and Ziggler win this match, or are Strowman and Rollins going to enter the main event as the tag team champions?
You know, it was surprising seeing the odds this much in favor of Roode and Ziggler. I did not expect that to happen when I first saw them, or when they were first come out with some of the online betting sites. I love Robert Roode. I think he's the most underrated wrestler in the WWE right now. And Ziggler, I've been saying for years that they just do a terrible job booking him. With that said, you know, when you look at the tag team champs, what makes more drama heading into the main event? Them as champs or them losing the belts because of friction? Well, you expect friction. So if they lose, it's not going to be anything where you say, oh, wow, they just lost. It's going to be like, oh, okay, we expected them to lose. If they keep the belts, that's a little bit surprising because you're thinking they're not going to keep the belts because they're going to fight for the championship later on. So if you keep the belts on them, they fight. Whoever wins, whoever loses, they still got all that friction between them. They still got to, you know, it's still going to come to a head. They can keep going in that angle. I want to pick Roode and Ziggler. Like, I want to pick them desperately. I'm a fan of both of them, especially Roode. But I'm having a hard time picking against Rollins and Strowman right now. You know, what's also funny is Stone Cold Steve Austin did a great job at Madison Square Garden on Monday night, and the crowd was electric. It was awesome. But who got the biggest rubs out of that moment? It wasn't Rollins. It wasn't Strowman. It was Austin and AJ Styles. Styles came off as like he was the biggest heel ever in the company, and Austin came off like he was the biggest star still in the company. That does not bode well for your top champion and tag team champions who were standing right next to Austin the entire time that was happening. With that said, you know, that sounds like I'd be picking against them, but I'm going with them. I think having them remain champs going into their Universal Championship match adds more drama than if they do the expected losing and so forth. I don't know how they're going to win the match, you know, because I feel like there could be interference or whatnot. The other surprise is I really liked what they did with the Viking Raiders on Monday night, throwing them into the mix. That was a little bit unexpected because, you know, they've been somewhat irrelevant in terms of main storylines or main feuds. They're taking on jobbers on a weekly basis. That was nice also. I'm taking the champs to retain. Everything in me wants to go with Roode and Ziggler, but you know what? It can go either way with the WWE. And if Paul Heyman's in charge, what's more shocking is the champs winning on Sunday night and then losing the belts on Monday night.
I actually am in basically the same spot as you for this match, but I'm the flip. I really wanted to pick Seth and Braun to retain and just couldn't get myself to do it. I'm taking Ziggler and Roode, and part of me is thinking, and maybe this is a bit more wishful thinking, because if you watched, again, going back to that Austin segment with the contract signing, when Rollins and Strowman each did their little piece before AJ and Co. came out, Rollins called himself the best wrestler in the world, and the crowd booed. And Strowman did his Monster Among Men, get these hands, and the crowd cheered. And there's part of me that thinks that this might be, if they wanted to swap and they wanted to make Strowman that true top-end babyface in the company that he nearly was until they pulled the rug out from under him with the Money in the Bank and the Lesnar stuff a couple of years ago. This is the opportunity to do it. You let Rollins get back some of his sneakiness, some of his heelish tendencies, and that's where I'm picking Roode and Ziggler. I'm picking Rollins to be the one to cost them the match and to do so intentionally, or at the very least to do so and then to take the opportunity to beat up on Braun Strowman once the match is over. So I'm taking Roode and Ziggler to win. I know it's almost cliche that the guys fighting for the main championship are defending a lesser belt earlier and they're going to lose because of friction, but I think that you can do it when they're both baby faces, as Rollins and Strowman are, if you plant the seed for something to happen. And that will get into the Universal Championship match because Seth Rollins, the reigning champion, is a -280 favorite. Braun Strowman is a +185 underdog. Rick, which man comes away with the victory in this match?
Oh, man, once again, I go back to that bad romance angle. Since then, Seth Rollins' momentum, his whole edge to him has gone down. He was hurt more by that whole on-air romance garbage than Becky Lynch was. I would love to see Rollins lose here and Strowman get a nice big run. But this is Clash. This isn't one of their 4 main pay-per-views. It'd make more sense to have Rollins lose at a major one like Survivor Series or WrestleMania or Royal Rumble or something like that than it does having him lose at a Clash of Champions event. Not only that, you got SmackDown going to Fox in a couple weeks, less than a month. And there's going to be the whole new draft and stuff like that in terms of shifting around, shuffling the roster and stuff like that. To me, in my opinion, it would make more sense having Braun Strowman go to SmackDown and be a big star on that show than it would be to keep him on Raw, even as a Universal Champ on Raw. I believe SmackDown is going to become their top priority, at least for the short term, because of the mega deal they have, the chance at the large audience they can have, one of the 4 major broadcast networks. Like, this is an opportunity that happens once in a lifetime. They can't drop the ball on this. Everything I see is WWE going all out for SmackDown on Fox. I don't see them having Rollins lose this belt on a pay-per-view, network event, whatever you want to call it, that isn't one of the main 4. And I see actually Strowman having a better shot of going and being a star on SmackDown than having him be a B player to Rollins for X amount of months until he can finally take the belt. To me, Rollins is going to keep the belt. I think they're going to make them their Raw's franchise player for a while now. The only person I think should win the title before Strowman would be AJ Styles, but I'm a little bit biased. Then we got the whole Bray Wyatt factor. Who knows what they're going to do with him in the near future? Is he going to be a championship contender? Which show? No, Strowman's not going to win. I think, and that's why I was saying they should keep the tag belts, because it'll prolong their interaction and it'll keep them, that tension going, and it can keep the feud going until they decide, hey, maybe Strowman should go to SmackDown, maybe Strowman should get the belt, whatever. I'm going with Rollins to retain.
We're coming from similar ideas, but coming away with it with a very different conclusion. Because I agree with Fox coming out, they're going to need to move someone over, and I think Rollins and Becky Lynch would both make good additions to SmackDown. And if Becky loses the title to Sasha and she and Charlotte swap places, or even if Becky just goes over to SmackDown to challenge Bayley, then it makes more sense. You would have to – I don't know that WWE, with how public they have been to endorse the Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins romance, I don't think they're going to split them up like they tried to do with Rusev and Lana. I think that this is more of an endorsement where both could go over. Seth Rollins can be the player. If Seth Rollins turns on Braun and goes into those heelish tendencies and goes all in on that before the draft, he becomes a good challenger for Kofi, because we agree that Kofi's beating Randy Orton. So someone's got to be the heel to take that title off of him where it feels earned and doesn't just feel like, well, we had to pick someone, especially if SmackDown is going to be the show. Rollins has been the guy for WWE since Reigns never got over with the fan base originally a couple of years ago. I think Strowman winning here makes a lot of sense because I think that him against AJ Styles makes sense. I think that having Seth going over to SmackDown makes sense because either way, The Fiend can come out and go after anybody. Because The Fiend, with the Shield and the Wyatt family history, The Fiend can have that chemistry with Seth Rollins. The Fiend can go after AJ Styles there's got to be something with the two of them that they had in their past. Braun Strowman's a former member of the Wyatt family. The Fiend would have that. It works on any level. The Fiend is just an outstanding character and will work with any opponent. There's a storyline backing, too, that would work with any opponent. The way I see this going is that they put the belt on Braun, and if SmackDown becomes more of the wrestling sport-centric show of the two, as has been discussed, at least by fans, for a long time since that deal was announced, I could see Seth Rollins being a big part of that, where it becomes more of the competition. Seth Rollins, Kofi Kingston, Styles might work over there too, but it's something that I basically see is we're coming at it from the same spot because we're both going, okay, they've got to build SmackDown, and I'm going, they've got to have a contender, a heel to go after Kofi Kingston. Someone that is believable, someone that is at the top level in the game, and it could be AJ Styles, it could be Seth Rollins. I see them doing it with Seth Rollins. I see them losing the tag titles. I see him losing to Braun Strowman, and I see him then getting drafted, in however many weeks' time, whenever they're doing the WWE draft. So we have basically the same concept or the same thing that we're trying to create our play out from. We're just going from the opposite sides of things, which is interesting. I think either would be a really good solution. I think it would be really interesting to see them go head-to-head as the tag team champions and to see Seth retain and see what Braun does. But Braun's got to win one at some point. I know it's not one of their WWE would argue big five shows because Money in the Bank is at least up there with Survivor Series at this point, if not closing in on SummerSlam. And, the Rumble is clearly the number two, at least in my opinion, and WrestleMania is obviously the number one. But, there's been reports out there that the WWE is considering doing that tiered package for the network subscription where the $9.99 would still get you just the pay-per-views. You'd get more content for however much more, and there's a free option apparently that they're discussing. I forget which of the wrestling blogs or if it was even like an Awful Announcing came out with that report, but it'll be interesting. I'm excited to see both of them. I'm excited to see what they decide to do. Storyline-wise, it's really interesting to me, which is all you can really hope for. One bout that was supposed to be on the Clash of Champions card but isn't is the King of the Ring finals between Baron Corbin and Chad Gable. Instead, this fight's going to happen on Raw on Monday night. As of right now, that's what it's scheduled for anyway. Rick, do you like this matchup for the finals, and who do you think comes away with the win?
They've done a good job building up Chad Gable in this tournament, making people care about him. Okay, that's the key. You got a talented wrestler who people know about. He's been around for years now. He's been a former tag team champion, but now they care about him. So you give them kudos for that. With that said, having him win the tournament makes less sense than having Corbin, who we've both talked about in the past, who reports have come out and said Vince, it's like Vince's boy. Everything points to Corbin winning the King of the Ring, and I believe he's going to win the King of the Ring because it just adds to his heel gimmick and just gives everybody another reason to hate him even more. He's flirted. He's gone back and forth with being a heel that draws heat for being a heel and then being a heel that nobody cares about. They just want you off the screen type of heel. He's gone back and forth. I think this King of the Ring tournament, though, is pushing him back to the first category. I think if he can win that, it's going to keep him in that category. It's just going to add to his whole character, his whole storyline. WWE will get mileage out of that. And then I think what can happen with Chad Gable is he can end up being used to go for a secondary title. Now he's become a character, a wrestler that people care about. And so if he's in a feud for a secondary belt, it makes that belt seem a little bit more special because he's going for it. Corbin can end up becoming a rival again for Rollins. He can go to SmackDown too. I mean, a lot of things are going to change in a couple weeks, but the one thing that's not going to change is Vince's affection and affinity for Baron Corbin. Every time people think he's dead in the water, he's resurrected. Just when I think I'm out, they pull me back in. Vince is pulling us back in. Corbin's winning it.
I said before the tournament, we were talking about it on the podcast, that the King of the Ring moniker tends to work better for heel characters because it allows them to go all in, and sometimes it doesn't work. I mean, Bad News Barrett was better than King Barrett, but it allows them to embrace the monarchy and just basically take all of the negative aspects that you can with something like that, with a role like that, and capitalize on it. Jerry the King Lawler was a great heel for many years because of that. But I do think they've done a really good job of building up Gable. I think that the fact that Shane McMahon inserted himself into something with Gable might lead that to being a feud. You could, if they do keep Owens off of TV for a little while, if Shane and Gable have a match at the next pay-per-view, you could do something like that and have KO run in and basically help boost Gable by giving him a good match against someone who, regardless of what your thoughts are with Shane McMahon and putting himself on all these things, he always draws eyeballs, and he's always – I can't recall there being a feud where he may have gone over, it may have been the wrong booking decision, but there's always a rub, at least in the moment, for whoever he's going up against. So I think that they can prolong him that way, and I think that going from Constable Corbin to King Corbin might be the ego trip that brings Baron Corbin back to the level he was at when he left NXT initially, where I remember when he debuted going, I loved him. I hated him, but I loved to hate him. He was so entertaining as a heel.
Very enjoyable in NXT. Very enjoyable. He was one of the top 4 or 5 gimmicks and workers that they had down there at the time. But like most who come up from NXT, he's been up and down with WWE not being able to find something suitable for him. The Constable thing, although it was lame, it started to lean him in a direction where they eventually got to now. It took a long ways to get there. We had to go through a lot of growing pains to get to that point. But he's on the cusp right now of being able to cement himself as a top heel with believability instead of nobody even wants to see him.
I agree. And I think that making him the King of the Ring allows him to have something to further legitimize him and bring him back into that fold of being because he's fully capable of being one of the top villains for either Raw or SmackDown because he's so good at being hateable. He just really is. And giving him something like this to further make him even more hateable can only help. This has been The Payoff. We're going to have plenty more in the weeks to come as we discuss the storylines as they develop, random wrestling rants, and, of course, bringing you available betting lines for pay-per-views. Let us know down in the comments below if you agree with our picks. Would King Gable be a better option than King Corbin? We want to know your thoughts, so let us know. I'm Drew Goldfarb. He's Rick Rockwell. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.